All right. So let's talk about what solidarity looks like on the opposite side. Okay. So this one is going to be a little weird because I think this gives insight into how cooperative folks whose beliefs are based in hate and divisiveness. In my estimation, they probably would not call it hate and divisiveness, but I know better. They just rebrand it every few years as something different. But we're calling it deep conservatism now, right? Or far right conservatism, but it's racism. That's full stop. We're going to show how they stick together. And I want to have this in contrast to that riverboat thing, because what we're talking about with this Jason Aldean thing is this happens quite a bit, especially when it comes to voting. These people vote. They get together, they get organized. I think Malcolm X has a quote that I think works right here. He says, we're not outnumbered, we're out organized, right? So that's why that riverboat thing was so special for Black folks, because it showed a little bit of solidarity. We're going to rally around this person and support him in his time of need. Well, the opposite of that is this Jason Aldean guy. So I'm going to do a little bit of reading from Rolling Stone, and I'm going to tag Q in along the way just to kind of help paint a picture, because I know Q has been champing at the bit to try to get this one. That's an inside, well, I guess not inside joke, because last week or 2 weeks ago we were trying to figure out if it was champing at the bit or chomping at the bit. Turns out it's both, but champing is not wrong. But Q's been champing at the bit to get at this topic here, so I'll read a bit. All right, this comes from Rolling Stone. Conservative fans tried to push Jason Aldean to number one. They just missed. Jungkook and Lotto prevail after streams and sales for Try That in a Small Town skyrocketed thanks to the controversy around the song and video. Okay, let me read a bit. Conservatives hoping to drive Jason Aldean's controversial Try That in a Small Town to number one on the charts following CMT's move to pull the music video fell just short on Monday. Bear in mind, we're reading this a little bit after it came out because we couldn't get to it last week. So forgive me, the timeline might not sound as accurate, and you're hearing us after we've recorded this. I'll go on. As Jungkook and Lotto's 7 reigned victorious. But the controversy clearly stoked flames among MAGA circles, giving the song's sales a major boost last week and propelling the song to number 2 on the chart. According to data service Luminate, which powers the Billboard charts, Try That in a Small Town was garnering fewer than 1,000 sales per week and hovering just shy of 1 million streams per week in the month prior to when Aldean released the song's music video on July 14th. Immediately, Aldean faced swift backlash as everyone from fellow artists like Sheryl Crow and Jason Isbell to scholars of racial violence pointed out the parallels to white nationalist narratives in Aldean's depiction of protest as violent and lawless, and his taunting refrain, "Try that in a small town, see how far you make it down the road." CMT pulled the video within a few days, drawing a predictably furious outcry from the right wing and vows to drive the song up the charts. So I'm going to read a little bit more here, but in short, this video pulled footage from the BLM protests. Now you'll hear, because we have to say his side of the story, but you'll hear him say that he didn't know that it was that, and he, whatever. I guess he didn't have permission to use the footage anyway. But those of us in the know realize that this is coded. This is like dog whistle musicianship right here. Musicianship. He's making a song for those really entitled folks and these folks that feel like America belongs to them and the flag is theirs, and that, Donald Trump is the second coming of Jesus Christ. It gives them a rallying cry, reason to beat their chest, right? That's not to say that we haven't had songs to move the culture forward on our side, and by our side I mean the more, I guess, liberal side of things, or less conservative side of things. But this one is a little different in that this song, there's connections to violence that are very realistic and very much based in a real history. And so for this Jason Aldean record, when the video comes out, they were showing like a courthouse, and that's where they used to do like public lynchings of Black people back in the day. And, you know, obviously the footage of the protests really pits Jason Aldean's message of try that in a small town against the messaging of the BLM protests of 2020. In other words, it's a rallying cry that is like the lyrics don't directly reference it, but when the video did, that's when it blew up because everyone's like, okay, clear. Now you can't even hide it anymore. Like we knew, but now we know because you're literally showing us the video. So I'm going to turn it over to Q to get his early thoughts, and then we'll get back to reading a little bit more about this.
I guess the most frustrating part is that their efforts did not fail. As of 10 hours ago, a story released by Rolling Stone stated that the song last week actually did make it to number one.
Oh, okay.
However, what Rolling Stone also pointed out is that it was clear that was their effort.
Yeah.
And once it got there, no one cared. The song dropped 24 spots on the charts the following week. It's no longer in the top 10.
Yeah.
It might, as I'm looking now, it's not in the top 30.
Yeah.
As I'm looking now, it's not in the top 40. As I'm looking now, it's not in the top 50.
That's all that's worth
As
clocking.
I'm looking now, it's not in the top 60. I'm going to scroll until I find it.
Well,
70. You can talk, Ramses.
So watch this.
80.
Donald Trump.
90.
Go ahead.
It's not in the top 100. I won't scroll past that because I think my point is proven. Right? It was a troll job by people that hate just like he intended them to.
Yeah.
He pretended he had no idea when there's video of protest in Atlanta in his video.
Yeah. Yeah. So watch this.
It's intentionally insultingly deceitful.
Yeah. So watch this.
Throw the rock and hide your hand is what my people call that.
Yeah.
Cowardice.
So Donald Trump's, what was that? The choir, the January 6th choir, the people that were in prison or whatever, they did a rendition of America the Beautiful, the Pledge of Allegiance, or some song, right? Maybe the national anthem, who knows? But it was like the supporters of the January 6th insurrection that had went to jail. That song ended up going to number one. Not necessarily because it was quality music or it slaps or it was, what it was. Even this song right here, we know that it don't slap because it was getting 1,000 sales per week prior to the controversy. People weren't checking for it. It's like you said, a troll job. So these things, the January 6th choir, this sort of thing, and other things are kind of an act of solidarity on that part. They're a response to the I'm a huge fan of wokeness. I'd rather be woke than sleep, dog. 10 times out of 10.
For real. And I want to say this before you move on, because I want to quote an actual source and not just myself.
Okay.
Rolling Stone says the song fell 24 spots.
Okay.
That was earlier today. I don't see the song, but Rolling Stone does this for a living. So I'm going to lean on them.
Okay.
But it still makes the point.
Yeah.
Typically, if a song reaches number one, it's there for longer than a week. And if it does drop, it drops to 2.
Yeah.
It drops to 4, not 25.
Yeah. So anyway, that solidarity and that organization around and the sad part is that it's like almost like these people know that it's hate. They know they're like they'll call it frustration, they'll call it fed up. I'm fed up with whatever, but it's hate. It's all it is, right? And we know that, but they need it to be anything other than racism. That's why they don't like that word, because that means that they've lost the narrative, right? You can't be you and be racist.
That they're a bad person,
right? And they can't
they don't want to be perceived as bad people. They're just upset,
right? How could I be a bad person?
Tired of being marginalized. They're just acknowledging that racism towards white people is a far worse problem than racism towards non-whites in this country.
Yeah, you should
That's
check out
all,
our
Ramses.
check out our show from last week if
That's
you
all they're trying to express.
you want to get that.
You specifically to understand that.
Yeah. Well, activities like this that push a hateful message that fly in the face of what is simply an affirmation that Black lives have worth is on its face insulting and hurtful. And they will adopt any possible vantage point other than that. It's glaringly obvious vantage point to make their case.
It's the reason why the social constructs of Black and white were so brilliantly placed, right? All of you immigrants that have come here that are not from Africa, rewind, that don't look like you're from Africa, whose skin isn't dark, who lack melanin, can identify as white. And once we do that, the drastic minority of people will be identified as Black. So even though we're very, very different, we're German, we're Irish, we're Australian, we're French, we're Swiss, we're Spanish, we're Portuguese even. We're white, all of us. And once I can get all of you to identify as white, I can then present white as superior and everything else as beneath.
Yeah. What Q's talking about here is
and then the rest of your life, without knowing it, because it's an ideology now, you have been indoctrinated to the idea of simple self-protection, self-preservation, if you will. So kind, well-to-do people fight, vote, sing, march, and organize to protect the social construct of white supremacy because it is drastically beneficial to them.
Right. Now, I need to fill in a gap here.
Please.
So if you look throughout history, until about maybe the late 1500s, early 1600s, you won't notice white people. Of course, our modern interpretation of what white people is, those people existed, but you won't find them. They're not documented anywhere any more than Black people existed prior to this time. The term white people was created to delineate the non-slave class from the slave class. In other words, based on your appearance, you could tell a person's status in a given society, Black, because of the slave trade. So shout out to Great Britain and the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Americans. And let's not pretend like the Middle East, those countries in there didn't have anything to do with it as well. And so this is the origin story of Black people as a term and white people as a term.
And even then, during your progressive movements, call those Black people African Americans and everyone else just American.
Now, let me take that a step further. So this country has used that white supremacy at several points to let's say after several points after slavery ended, to continue to benefit from the presence of Black people, Black bodies, and to profit off of Black labor. And I'm not just talking about prisons. I'm talking about land theft. I'm talking about a series of aggressive acts, political acts, and fiscal acts, laws enacted to uphold a system that protects white interests and doesn't consider Black interests. And I'm not just talking about Jim Crow and, the Black codes. And I'm not just talking about the GI Bill. And I'm not just talking about redlining. It's so much deeper, like land theft. We could just start there. Billions and billions of dollars just completely taken, washed off of the record. And then guess who ended up with that land, right? So for many years, Black people have borne the brunt of a system that protects white interests. I'm not making this stuff up either. Why would I do that? I could be easily debunked. I just have happened to be able to do so much research over the past few years, especially. And then now I'm condensing it into a conversation. So when we talk about this guy, Jason Aldean, and his song and his very pro-white supremacist messaging, dog whistle messaging, and then we see the solidarity around it. This is something that we all need to be made aware of, because as Malcolm X said, often enough, his quote goes, we are not outnumbered, we are outorganized. And we have to know that even though it's hate, it's very, very sophisticated hate. It's sophisticated at the polls. It's sophisticated to trick Billboard charts algorithms, right? Because they're not increasing the amount of radio plays. So that's clicks, that's downloads, that's streams, that's everything of people saying, this is the reality that I want to live in. I'm going to do this 1,000 times.
Rolling Stone notes, the song's drop from number 1 to 21 is among the biggest falls from the top 100 in the chart's history.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to finish reading this article just so I can finish painting the picture, but I have to, say his piece too, just to be fair or whatever, I guess. All right. Just last week alone. So again, Q's reading more current from a more current source. I'm reading the source that we built this segment around. So mine is a little bit older than what Q's reading from. Anyway, just last week alone, Aldean's song earned about 228,000 digital song sales and 11.6 million streams. For reference, the song has 238 digital sales all time, meaning that around 95% of the sales came last week after the controversy started. 55% of its nearly 21 million all-time streams came last week as well. Aldean faced stiff competition from BDS's Jungkook, who said, well, I guess we don't need to read that anymore. Anyway, regardless of where Small Town landed on the chart, the track has become yet another dog whistle for conservatives. How about that? Who have bemoaned the critiques as examples of so-called cancel culture. Right-wing entrepreneur and long-shot presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, whoever that's it, tweeted last. Oh, I know who he is. I'm just being funny. Tweeted last week that he'd be playing the song at rallies and encouraging followers to drive the song up the charts before doing his best to change the subject to hip hop. Ramaswamy eagerly echoed the song's thinly veiled, threatening tone. Quote, "It'd be a real shame if the song hits number 1." Other accounts have referenced the Bud Light boycott some conservatives tries to get off the ground after the beer brand partnered with trans TikTok star Dylan Mulvaney, or the campaign to boost QAnon adjacent thriller Sound of Freedom. All right, now here we go. Aldean himself has repeatedly dismissed the backlash, denying that Try That in a Small Town is a pro-lynching song. He says, quote, "There's not a single lyric in the song that references race or points to it," he wrote on social media. Obviously, the video told a much different story, but, this is what he's hiding behind. So they say it with your chest if you mean it. Otherwise, don't play with people. But, anyway, let me finish reading. All right. On Friday night, Aldean addressed a controversy during a concert in Cincinnati, seeming to applaud efforts to cash in on the song's notoriety. Quote, "You guys know how it is. It's cancel culture. It's a thing. It's somehow where if people don't like what you say, they try and make sure they can cancel you, which means they try to ruin your life, ruin everything. One thing I saw this week was a bunch of country music fans that can see through a lot of the BS. All right. I saw country music fans rally like I've never seen before, and that was pretty bad, as in good. I got to say thank you guys so much." So this was his statement on the whole thing. Just to be fair, obviously, we know that it can only be one of two things: what we believe it to be, which is outright racism, and him taking advantage of that and making music about that, which we don't believe is kind at all. Or
and then there's the easy veil of just painting that not as racism, but as patriotism.
But thinly veiled patriotism thinly veiled racism is Well, there, I guess it's one and the same. You know, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's the part that's most
Yeah.
terrifying.
So it's
wrap it in the American flag, and it's okay.
So watch this. It's either him making a song about hate, or it's him taking advantage of people who have hateful tendencies.